What do you mean, John 3:16, for God so loved the world, every man packs an M16? What do you mean? What do you mean? What do you mean, John 3:16, for God so loved the world, every man packs an M16? What do you mean? What's going on, guys? Slightly injured, but alive. IllumiGnosis here. I fell on a mountain last night and got stuck up there until way after dark, and so I'm pretty tired and moderately injured. I don't think it's broken or really dislocated, but my shoulder definitely, it might, I don't know, something's not right. Not good, but glad to be here anyways. Are you on Instagram? Yes, but I don't really post much on Instagram. I probably should. Who are you to wave your finger? You must have been out of your head. Yeah, and that's the thing, you know, that most of humanity is out of their heads. It's literally true. This planet is like an insane asylum. And that's what I wanted to talk about tonight, basically, you know. Consciousness is a mystery to everyone. It's the hard problem of science. It's the hard problem in my life. You know, I've had a tremendous number of experiences that violate the orthodoxy, you know, the mainstream institutionally approved ontological model, right? That, you know, a lot of the stories that I tell, I am acutely aware of the fact that most people would think that I was either lying or delusional. And the crazy part about that is that I actually withhold quite a bit because of that, you know? And lately I've kind of been thinking that I shouldn't do that at all. I shouldn't mute any of it, because the reality is I've been extremely good about objectivity. I have constantly questioned myself, you know, whenever I think I've experienced something of a metaphysical nature, or, you know, anything that can kind of fall into that category. I always look for as many different explanations as I can before I settle on anything. And usually the consequence of that is that I don't settle on anything, you know? And what we usually end up with is just a bunch of possibilities, you know, or at least two possibilities. In my experience, things of that nature never terminate. They just, why? You know, the best you're going to do is end up with two possibilities, like the forked tongue of the serpent, right? So, yeah, you know, part of the agenda here, I think, is to kind of normalize these things. And one of the biggest issues we have is that the spirituality in general has kind of become associated with nuts, flakes, and people that aren't very good with reason. And that's totally valid, unfortunately. We have sort of disconnected ourselves from the tribal community that had reverence. I don't want to use the word reverence, because that's another thing we need to stop doing, is putting people on a pedestal that have weird cognitive abilities. That doesn't make any sense. It's going to be normal eventually. So, you know what I mean? Like, we got to cut that shit out. Judeo-Christian model hasn't helped much with their idea of spiritual hierarchy, right? You're supposed to be subservient to this God, and therefore his avatars or representatives you would also be subservient to, I guess. No good. Lost track though, man. I was on a roll, and then I hit a speed bump. My arm hurts. Yeah, so the nuts and flakes thing, I guess we were talking about, you know, how we've created that association, and it's difficult to redeem yourself once that's happened. And it's something that has been fomented and propagated and promulgated by the propaganda machine, because, you know, if you guys have been watching my streams, I talk about this all the time, but Albert Pike, 33rd degree Freemason, said that Rome feared free thought and sovereign people that knew they were sovereign, you know, but feared free thought more than vice or crime. I asked Perplexity AI why the mysteries were banned in both Egypt and Rome, and it said to control people's thoughts and to undermine their sovereignty, right? So this is the number one enemy of Babylon. You know, this is the thing that they fear the most, is people waking up, realizing they don't need them, realizing their autonomy, and realizing that if this is a universal transformation, there's no longer any need for governance, because an illuminated person is capable of conducting themselves in a way that is in homeostasis with their culture and their environment and the people around them, because that's what illumination is. You know, it cannot be faked. And you are not going to achieve any kind of meaningful transformation in society by legislation or trying to convince people to adhere to doctrines. That doesn't work. Look around you. You know what I mean? Doesn't work. Not going to happen. It's never worked before. It's never going to work in the future. You can get rid of capitalism and replace it with communism, and you can replace that with socialism, and you can replace it all with whatever. And it doesn't matter what ism schism game that you integrate into the system, it's the same thing's going to happen until the consciousness of the people, including their overlords, which really just need to be eliminated, is transformed. And we're going to talk about how that can actually happen, because it seems like it's just this lofty, naive, kind of ridiculous new agey idea that we're all going to wake up one day vibrating higher or whatever, you know, that, what exactly does it mean? If we raise global consciousness, everyone gains a few IQ points, you know, their heart gets a little bigger for no reason. You know what I mean? What exactly are we saying? I'll tell you in just a minute. What's going on, Athena? Good to see you here. Class consciousness and spiritual awakening are very closely related. True. We are so close to class consciousness, so fucking close. Some chirps are coming from my mic intermittently. I'm not surprised. I thought goats were good. Climbing up mountains, what? You know what's real hilarious that you say that? Because Nick is with us, right? So he pointed out that, you know, even though I haven't been in the best shape, had surgeries and all this stuff, that, you know, I'm always like way ahead of people in the mountains and whatnot, and very agile in them too. And I make generally good decisions. We didn't get stuck because of my choice. Let's put it that way. I went along with somebody else, and it didn't turn out well. So at any rate, you know, there's the suspicion of a previous life. The guy was a mountaineer, and way back in my 20s, I was in the mountains with a bunch of friends that were in way better shape than I was. And one of them afterwards commented, like, man, you were like a whole ridge ahead of us. It was insane. It's like watching a mountain goat. And I never really thought about the connection to this potential past life in that regard. You know, why am I so natural in the mountains all the time? Like, seems I have done this before, still it's so obscure. Where were we in this? Oh yeah, we were about to talk about the hows of the what. Let me see if I can get the chirps out of my mic, though. I don't see any red. Oh my gosh, here it goes. It's here. This is overloading. Check, check, check. Still hot, still hot. Check, check. Check, 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 check. That should be better. Is that better? Is that too quiet now? Oh, it was red a little bit. Let's see. Check, check. Yo, 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 yo. Okay. I took a plane out to Cleveland late this evening to help my ninjas clean up some ninjas no longer breathing now. What do you believe in? Hit the weed and breathe. It's a cold-ass world. Ninjas will kill you in your sleep. Watch me. Till they stop me, bloody murder me. All right, I think it's good. It's like if you hold it. Okay. It's now quieter. Is it too quiet? Gosh, you guys. Yeah, well, here. That's too much. Too much. How about that? Is that good? Are we good now? We should be good now. Here, I'll boost this a little bit. Are we good? We're good. Okay, so, you know, what is this higher consciousness thing? Like, what is the point? How does it happen? I talk a lot about entrainment, and it is a fact that entrainment applies to human brains. And this is all recent research, and I was really happy to see it because I've had these ideas, but I didn't have any real bases for them. That we could entrain consciousness, and that whoever's towing the line, like the prima mobile or the ipsissimus, the secret chiefs of the world that are sort of out front. Every time someone has a genuinely new idea or a new thought, they raise this net a little bit. When they're less buoyed by animal instinct and impulse and shadow impulses, all of these kind of things, then they are cycling higher. But there was no proof that higher consciousness correlated to faster brainwaves until last year. And they did some studies where they measured the brain waves of meditators, and the master meditators were higher. And also, when they brought one of these guys into the room, everyone's cycles would raise a little bit. And then when the person goes away, they drop back down, but not back to where they were. So the science is in, it's a real thing. And the highest vibes ever measured so far were from a person on psilocybin, not a master monk. So tuck that in your little emotional and psychological travel bag and carry on with it. I was not surprised one bit to hear that. So it is true, this thing that I've been promoting all of these years, that if we do our work, our internal work, our inner work, that we actually, by improving ourselves, by lifting ourselves up, we have an invisible influence, a hidden hand that allows us to, whether they want to or not, really, to be dragged up with us, And the thing is, the entire universe, everything we experience, everything we think, it's all been called illusory for thousands of years, right? All of the great mystics have said something to that effect. Well, what do they mean? What they mean is that there is a bunch of energy that is slowly balancing to zero. That's what all that's happening. And the story that we see is just a veil draped over that energy to give the perception of like a story unfolding. It's not fundamentally real. Completely lost where I was going with that. It was going to be good though. Oh my God, maybe I'll think of it in a second again. I'm very tired, you guys. I'll check back in with the chat in a second and check the... Oh, yeah, I remember now. Okay, so what I was getting at there is that, we have these physical layer explanations of what's happening. So as we start to raise the consciousness, the way that would actually look is that people would be reading different stuff. They would be engaging in different activities. And it would appear that those things are causal, right? That they're causing the transformation. It's a trend, and it's just causing change in people. You know what I mean? It's not gonna look like people just like waking up and fucking snorting fairy dust and huffing unicorn farts all of a sudden. They're already doing that, and it's not getting us anywhere. You know what I mean? There will be what appear to be mechanisms of this change. It's not going to be some 5D transition into a perfect world with no harm and no danger and no bigotry, and you know what I mean? That is not how the universe is constituted. It's made of the interaction of opposites, and everything arises from the interaction of opposites. So we will always have that relativity. But we can raise the floor because it's a closed system, right? So we can change where the lowest point is, what the greatest suffering is, how much waste there is compared to productivity, or at least the form, the efficiency of that interaction. We can always improve. Nature is always improving. When you look at evolution, one of the big arguments, I think, against it being a blind process is the fact that the trajectory is improvement. It's not just, it's clearly not just random adaptations that happen to facilitate survival. There's clearly more going on than that. But anyways, let me check back in with the chat and see what kind of input you guys have. And these children want to be eaten? What are you talking about? It's awesome. Eat your own children and become one with Saturn? It doesn't sound advisable. Okay, there's a question about whether or not I think that reincarnation is linear. According to an experience that I had involving documented and certain, you could call it non-ordinary cognition or transconscious knowledge reception, which is a big part of the development along these lines, right? That kind of stuff happens more and more. Synchronicity increases as the internal balance comes into, or the subconscious and conscious mind come into balance, then your internal and external experience also achieve a greater level of homeostasis, and then you experience all of these other orders of symmetry. But the thing about reincarnation is I don't know that reincarnation is even necessarily true. I had experiences that most people would be convinced are like proof of, like I figured out a past life for sure. But there are always alternative explanations, right? Like ancestral memory, because we're both English. There's the possibility of archetypal personality, highly defined archetypal personality distinctions causing certain proclivities and fucking predispositions. You know what I mean? Some of the things are weird to the point where it's hard to write them off. Like we had very specific events happen on the same day with people that were all the same age. Like, some of it is definitely difficult to dismiss. But the thing is, if that is a pattern that exists in the universe, it doesn't mean that I'm a reincarnation of anyone. It means that pattern exists, So no matter what you come up with, if I knew passages from the guy's book by heart before I ever read them. I was thinking in lines from the books when I was like 6. But the Akashic record, information is now considered energy. So information can't be destroyed, only transformed. That's what evolution is, really. The transformation of information in action, in biology. So all of those books, I heard a physicist once explain that you could destroy a book, burn it, and on some level in the quantum realm, every single word of that book is still there. And it's not the 0 point field. That's a misunderstanding. But yeah. And also that information can become entangled in other processes. So that would mean that a person could entangle with this mess of information that's just in the field everywhere. So there is nothing you can do that is ever going to prove reincarnation. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. In fact, most of the people in India that have had really convincing situations are probably related because they're from small villages that are full of incest. It's like normal. Incest is normal. So there's that, right? You have to epistemological fucking limits. People need to recognize those, and people need to learn to be okay with not knowing, because that's what drives and gives power to religions, cults, political parties, You know what I mean? You have to stop being a pussy and just admit that you don't know what happens when you die. Your intuition doesn't necessarily mean anything. You know, the Muslim that believes 100% that he is, righteous for blowing a bunch of people up and he's going to heaven or whatever, and the Christian's like, wait a minute, that's not right. Both these guys should look at each other and go, well, if he's wrong, that means I could be wrong, unless you're a fucking egomaniac and you can't imagine that you could be just as wrong as this other lunatic. You know what I mean? But as far as things being linear, let's get back to this experience, this other experience. So I had that experience that very strongly suggests a certain past life. And it still happens to this day. Things still come up. You know, I even sometimes have to correct my spelling because I'll write in English. I use words sometimes that I've had to look up because I can't find a definition, and they turn out to be, you know, archaic English words from that period. So, you know, I mean, at the same time, like I said, there's all these other potential explanations. But another instance, right? I had this experience where people saw this apparition floating behind me when I played guitar. 3 different people in 3 different places that did not know each other, right? And so it was weird, but I just kind of wrote it off. You know, what do you do about something like that? I go to South America, drink ayahuasca, and one day I'm walking along, and there's that being in front of me. And I'd actually seen it in a vision, not like a dramatic vision, just driving on the road in my mind's eye, like 10 years earlier or something. And then I put it together in that moment. I was like, oh shit, it's that thing that I saw. And that's what people have been talking about. And then Pachamama says, do you remember this? And I was like, yes. And she's like, do you want to know what it is? I said, yeah. And she's like, well, you know how in superposition one thing can be in 2 places at the same time? And it's not 2 objects, it's one thing in 2 places. And she says, souls are like that. And this is, you know, another part of your soul on a gas giant near Sirius B that didn't become a red dwarf star because of the influence of the other 2 stars. And the paper publishing that stars can be dwarfed in their development by the influence in a binary star system of the other 2 stars was published 10 days after the ceremony for the first time. So this wasn't even something that you would find in an astrophysics paper. I couldn't have read it anywhere. I don't study that kind of shit. You know, it was wild. And so then this NSA guy, I guess he's NSA, I don't know. He definitely had verified credentials. He was talking about, you know, the real truth that the NSA knows or something. And one of the things he said is that we are all just these avatars of these higher dimensional, like, alien beings. And then I remembered this ayahuasca experience, and I was like, holy shit, you know? So the answer to your question is we have no way of knowing. Like, I'm not into conjecture, really, you know? I can't, we can't know that kind of thing with certitude. But, you know, there's also the twin flame theory, which I kind of buy into. I don't know if how I define it is what people mean when they say this. I've never looked it up. But I assume that what they're referring to is that in the beginning, there was nothing. And when that nothing divided, it became 2. And one of the things that are expressed in that duality is male and female, right? And then all of the other things that came after it basically they followed the same blueprint, the same protocol of creation, right? So all the little individual souls divided too. You know, so you have the big one, it divides, and it makes a bunch of little things. They all divide the same way, just like cells. And so everyone has a counterbalance somewhere in the world. I think I have mine sleeping in the other room there. And yeah, so I don't know if that counts as like soul incarnation. I guess you're really different people, so probably not. But yeah, that's what I think about that. Please, you guys, hit the like button if you like this. Share. Hit the bell thing so that you don't miss anything. And also, we're demonetized. I do consultations and stuff. So if you go to my Patreon or our website, IllumiGnosis.com, you can fill out a form and you can talk to me about our retreats that are coming up in November. We have room for one person in the Sacred Valley until September 11th, and then November 11th we'll be in the jungle. Looking for questions here. I don't see anything. Immortality and your consciousness becoming a new universe after death is somewhat synonymous. Yeah, that's an interesting one. I don't remember what was going on here really, but I had a vision once of something like a light sperm. It was just like a single photon, but I also knew it was like an individual soul, and it was busted through space-time, and it's like this black hole was a womb, and that spark of light basically initiated the entire process, and it was the same spark of light at the end of that universe. I'm not explaining this well. The photon became everything, and stars were like the lieutenants overseeing the barracks, you know. Basically what he said. But I watched it happen, and it was pretty ridiculous to watch. I don't know what else really to say about that. We are fucked as a species. I don't know about that, Max. I mean, you know, we could be, but it really depends on us. That's something I was kind of getting to earlier and fell off a little bit, but it depends on us. You know, the shape it takes is ours to choose, and we may win, we may lose. You know, we have all of the tools, we have all of the potential, we have no excuse left not to turn this around, you know? And unfortunately, I think it might take some trimming of the fat, you know? There are definitely some folks that are not going to just calm down. They're not going to just chill out. They're not going to just, you know, fucking find a nice oak tree and light up a spliff and chill, you know? They're going to keep blowing shit up, and they're going to keep, you know, Islam, I think, has become bigger than Christianity. That's not good. It's not good, you know. And I'm not Islamophobic or whatever, but it does say in that book, kill everyone that's not a believer, and they'll do it whenever they're told, you know. And they do shit like putting girls in a cage and lighting them on fire because they wouldn't sleep with soldiers. And there's apparently like more of them now than there are Christians. It's not good, man. It's definitely not good. Christians generally are not good either. You know, even if they're not burning people alive anymore, they used to, and they might again, you know. The reality is that if you are a soul, a spirit that is constituted upon falsehood in your dogmas and your beliefs, then you are a cancer upon the face of the earth, period. And Christianity is a composite myth that was constructed from the bones of Hermes and other sun-worshiping groups, you know. And the best proof that I can offer, well, not the best because there's lots of bests, but a good proof that I can offer is, you know, about this thing about truth and falsehood as motivating factors and how big of a difference there is. When the conquistadors came to South America, they killed all of the Incans and they took all of their gold. And the Incans didn't exactly worship gold, but they called it either the sweat of Inti or the tears of Inti. Kori. Inti Kori. And they basically knew that it was crystallized consciousness, that it was light, you know. The Western alchemists knew this as well. Eliphas Levi, in fact, in the Transcendental Magic book that I was reading with you guys for months, he actually said gold is light, or gold and then, you know, dash, which is light. So they didn't give it monetary value, you know. They didn't kill people for it. They weren't going to rob you over it. They made their plates and their forks and spoons and all of their decorations on their walls, and everything was gold, Just everything was gold. And the sheer quantity of gold, when you go to the ruins, because there are these little like cubby holes where they put the gold effigies. There's like thousands of them in you know, Ollantaytambo alone, like thousands of places where these effigies were solid gold. But the conquistadors, who also worship the sun, did not know that they worship the sun. Right? I am the light, walking on water, you know, dies and resurrected, 3 days on the Southern Cross. 3 days on the cross, stops moving for 3 days on 23rd, 24th, and 25th, in the tomb for 3 days. I am the light of the world. You know what I mean? They explicitly tell them the truth over and over again in that fucking book. But yeah, so the difference is that the drive, the instinct to find gold, to accumulate gold, it's normal human instinct because we're really after higher consciousness, and gold is crystallized consciousness. That's what light is. And gold is light. And it's true. It was just verified that at the most fundamental level, a level more fundamental than particles, gold and light share a resonance. And the reason we can detect that is because they just made a fifth state of matter out of light that they're calling slow light, that's neither a gas nor a solid. And because of that, they were able to get harmonic resonant images from light and compare it to gold, because apparently scientists suspected this as well. So at any rate, and there's a bunch of it in your brain, and it does facilitate all of the different cognitive processes that go on in your head, from emotional stability to memory and reflexes, and you know, you name it. Also neural inflammation it gets rid of. So point being, the conquistadors didn't know why they were after the gold, so they had no reason. Passion without reason is madness. Instinct without reason is madness. You know, the Incas knew why they had it around, and so they were just sane about it, you know. That's really the difference in how a society looks when you have illumination and people are rooted and grounded in truth, or a culture that has been skull fucked by religion, basically. Yeah, protesting is probably dumb. Gold has plenty of real world use if you use it for your brain. Any advice for people protesting, fighting against? I can't really talk about that here. We can talk about that. I'm thinking on Monday night we'll do our patron-only Discord voice chat. We can talk about that then. But I will say that, yeah, protesting is pretty much stupid. You walk around with a sign in your hand, like shouting, and people just don't care, you know? Nope, that's not going to stop Babylon from blowing up children or whatever. It's better than nothing in a way, because it shows some solidarity, you know? It gives hope and inspiration to people that are thinking the same thing and maybe not doing anything. But it is a stupid solution, really. What we need is for people to actually come together in meaningful ways, to support each other with real resources, to develop genuine trust between one human being and another, you know what I mean? And to form... I got to be really careful with my my choice of words, you know what I mean? But to form collaborations that actually have some kind of impact. You know, people need to skill share. We have to build ourselves up, because some of the rules in this world are dictated to us and not by us. And one of those is that money is power. And it doesn't matter whether you like it or not. You know what I mean? Okay, that sucks. Great. But deal with it. You know what I mean? If you want to change it, guess what you're going to have to do? You're going to have to get the money in your pocket first. No way around it. You know what I mean? Or at least enough of it to really make your presence meaningful. You know, this is something I have not been able to do over the last 6 years or something. And it is extremely frustrating that it seems like most of the people that are inclined to any kind of action like that don't seem to be well healed, you know. I think a big part of that is just contentment. You know, people that are content don't really feel that they have much reason to rock the boat. So why are they going to jeopardize themselves? Why are they going to put themselves at risk? Why are they going to do anything when they're fine? You know, the ugly truth is that attitude is going to make you unfine sooner than later. You know, the sad thing is that people being selfish, self-absorbed douches like that don't really realize that, or maybe they do and they don't care. I've asked a couple that actually told me they didn't care about their grandkids, and I was like, well, I've never met them. I don't care, you know. But these boomers especially that have lived in this way have really destroyed the world for my son, you know, if it goes that way. And that sucks because they were able to be all smug and complacent while the world burned down around them. And now they're just going to die. And people like my son, who's one of the most innocent creatures that I've ever encountered, are going to get handed the plate of steaming people shit, you know. And that's foul. And that's a big part of the reason why I do what I do, you know, because I mean, I ain't got nothing better to do. That's for sure. Yeah, okay, Athena. Yeah, it can help shit, but that's not protesting. That was obstructing commerce. You know what I mean? There's a big difference. If you mean protesting, like walking around with picket signs and shit, that's, you know, that's fine, but it's not really going to do much. What you're talking about is the indigenous shutting down an entire country. Yeah, they got what they wanted when they did that, you know, but that's a paro, you know, that's a stop. That's not a bunch of hippies in San Francisco walking around with signs and yelling at the cops and stuff, you know. Tremendous difference. So, you know, basically my message is that you cannot attain to truth without the guidance of reason. And you cannot avail yourself of reason in any kind of meaningful way unless you are guided by intuition. And when you look at the fact that we have this cultural perception that spirituality and science are mutually exclusive and mix like oil and water, compare to my first statement, and you will arrive at a good summation of the problem that we are encountering. You know, when you see the universe as purposeless, and you are a microcosm, a reflection, it's a reflection, you're a reflection, it's all reflections, mirror symmetry is the foundation of it, happens at the Calabi-Yau manifold and D-brain level. Geometric resonance arises from their interactions and blah, blah, blah. But where was I going with that? Yeah, if you see the universe as purposeless, you are going to perceive yourself to be purposeless. And I have never seen a purposeless thing succeed at anything. Purposeless things die. That's what happens to them. That's what nature does. If something doesn't serve a purpose, it's subjected to de-emphasis and de-evolution. Period. No exceptions, including humans. You know, erasing purpose from humanity has been homicide. I was going to say unalivicide, you know, but it was engineered. It wasn't a choice on the people who have suffered. It was a choice made for them. Nevertheless, that's what happened. And so now, you know, one of the big glimmers of hope is the fact that across scientific disciplines, we are getting evidence that panpsychism, reincarnation, an afterlife, telepathy, precognition, none of these things are any longer incongruent with scientific theory, right? Because we have evidence for non-neural cognition, quantum consciousness. We even have some evidence of gold light brain interaction, which is pretty interesting. But really the most important thing is non-neural cognition is a fact now. We know that this is a thing. And quantum consciousness, likely, you know. One of the ways that we can understand that is that we know that information isn't lost at the quantum level and that it gets entangled in other systems. So information entangled in particles, consciousness entangled in particles, generated maybe by entangled biphoton pairs. You know, we're in a remarkable situation at the moment because we have the ability to understand the mechanistic basis behind the holistic universal consciousness that has been denied by the institutions in the interest of controlling humanity for, you know, however long it's been, 150 years or something. Unless you want to believe in one of their prepackaged make religions, which are there to subjugate, divide, destroy, to ensure that you do not attain to real spiritual experience. The Christianity, Islam, all these institutionalized religions were created to occult the face of God, not to reveal it. It's the most blasphemous fucking thing that's ever happened, you know, that they literally created these religions in such a way as to obstruct the attainment of actual spiritual experience for people. That's what they're for. That's how they're used. Don't get it fucked up, son. All right, you guys, questions, comments in the chat, because my arm is killing me and I'm not really that focused. So I'm only going to do about an hour, so we have until 12:11. We really do appreciate your support, by the way, you guys. Medical bills have been a bitch for us, and it's not over, apparently. I might even have to have surgery again, which is absolutely terrible. But it kind of seems like one of the, because I had a double hernia, and they repaired it. But apparently I'd waited too long, and my intestines were like all in places they weren't supposed to be, and it was a huge mess they weren't expecting. So long story short, I was in the operating room for way longer than they were expecting. And I think they probably were kind of coked up, honestly, seriously. And they just got sick of doing it, I think, you know, and one side might have broken open. And if that's true, I'm going to have to get cut open again and sew it back up. But it's not an emergency like it was before. So I won't do it until after November. It's not going to get in the way of the retreat. But still, it's looming that I might have to have another surgery and miss another like 2 months of productivity. So I'm not stoked about that. I was also really looking forward to getting back to like lifting weights and, you know, like being a man again, but that's not happening yet. I don't support religion. Support quasi-post-disorganized religion. Exposes the face of God. Well, it's real simple. You know, truth is hidden from no one. Like, I've one of the things that's baffled me the most since I was a child, you know, I pretty much came out of the womb with like fully formed, really. I know it sounds ridiculous, but it's true. Basically, I'm almost my same personality. I'm probably way more jaded now, you know. But I basically was just born thinking like, you know, these religions are dumb, obviously. Like, you know, how can people not just look around the world and realize, like, wait, that guy's from India, so he's, you know, Hindu, and this guy's from this tribe, so he believes in Pachamama or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, it's not hard to figure out. But I also strongly suspected that it was possible to get something along the lines of truth. You know, to ascertain all of it is not happening. You know, there are limits, there are boundaries, epistemological fucking boundaries. Like when you try to observe a proton, the more precisely you try to measure it, the more quantum fluctuations there are. The thing becomes less knowable. There are safeguards built into the universe that stop us from decoding all of its mysteries, and there's a good reason for that. And the reason for that is something of which I know but do not speak. And, they're good enough just to know that there are limits. But anyways, I always thought that gnosis was a real thing, and that it was possible to ascertain through reason and observation, things of the nature of metaphysics, I guess. And over the years, I feel like I've confirmed that pretty strongly. In fact, if you guys go back to my early videos, early live streams and watch them, you'll see that I was anticipating all of the science and stuff a long time ago based on metaphysics, based on hermetics, not because I was in a super genius mad scientist in my basement, like figuring shit out first, but just because, pattern recognition and extrapolating things from as above, so below cosmological principle and things like that, and also just there are common sense things that you can see in the world that are taken for granted as true, like, random evolution and life proceeding from dead matter, which, even now physicists are saying that can't have happened. I mean, I've several leading physicists, I've watched interviews and they're like, there's no way that life came from death or from inert matter. It just didn't happen. And then there's also big problems in the theory of evolution. And I really, for years, assumed that I was just not educated enough and didn't understand, and that they did have answers for the questions I was asking. And then with the advent of AI, I was able to data scrape the whole world and find out that no, that they're just acting like these questions don't exist. It's hard to believe, but it's true. And this is why the governments have to spend trillions and trillions of dollars on propaganda and create religions and do all this shit to occult the face of God, because it's everywhere, and I'm calling God loosely, I don't really know what I mean when I say that. But the fact that the universe is, has a teleological integration and is not a matter of just random gobbledygook self-organizing. We could say that God is the organizing principle. I guess I'd be okay with that. You know what I mean? The reason they have to put so much energy into propaganda is that it's not that fucking hard to become illuminated. It really isn't. I'm a smart guy, but I'm not that fucking smart, I mean, this is not something that's out of reach of the average person. And when I say illumination, I don't necessarily mean like, Buddha level enlightenment. Every mental disorder, including illumination, is on a spectrum, like autism or psychopathy or whatever, they're all spectrum disorders. Illumination is no different. Oh, wow, we cranked up some numbers while I wasn't paying attention, I guess. We need another moderator. Yeah. Well, shit, guys, I guess I'll stick around. But, I was asking for questions. What about cleaning microplastics and heavy metals with alpha? You asked me about that, and what's actually going on that I was able to find is... I can't remember if it was a fungus or like a single-celled organism that they've found that can do that and safely. So what are those things that you take, they're like dehydrated bugs. I can't recall the name right now. Acidophilus and that type thing. Something like that, but it's going to go into your brain and eat all the plastics out. It's sick, right? All right, I don't see any inquiries. You guys don't have nothing you want me to riff on for a minute? Riff like Casey Rocket? It's not a relapse if you do ketamine, guys. It's in the Bible. Oh my God, that bit, the newer bit, I guess. If you guys don't know who Casey Rocket is, you got to look it up. But he's like, yeah, last time I did ketamine was recently. It's not an overdose if it's ketamine. It's in the Bible. And he's like, yeah, me and my friend were praying Man, there were some fucked up prayers. I was just imagining God up there, like what the fuck was that? Like, because he's praying like, please Lord, make me big and small at the same time, and fill a waterbed full of warm milk. And he's like, I just imagine God up there, just like, wait, what the fuck was that? Should we OD these guys? I was like, man, this kid is just the perfect comedian. I think it kind of reminds me of like my friends in high school, really, you know. It's like a nostalgia trip. At any rate, what do we got going on here? I love Casey, me too. I'd love to visit South America before you left. Well, come on down, man. We have an extra room. We have the retreat in November, which is going to be amazing. The pristine, deep in the pristine jungle of Manu, where there are still giant anacondas and, capybara and tapir, all of the animals, macaws, everything is intact there. So we're super stoked to head down there again. I'm a little bit sick of the lack of oxygen here, and having to chew coca all the time is not as fun as you might think. I mean, look at it. Like, oh. I got it too wet too, so it's gross. But it will give me energy to chat a bit longer if you guys. Yeah, well, let me know, man. Definitely give you a deal. You've been a hugely important friend and supporter for a long time. So, yeah, we would hook you up, and it's going to be epic, dude. So, and it would be great to have you there because we have mostly repeat people. So if I know everyone there, it just makes it so much more comfortable for everyone. I don't have to bring in any strangers. Mm-hmm. Max, send me a email, please. Proton. Other than that, I have no answer for you. Lion's mane mushroom and niacin flush is fixing my brain. Yeah, that is extremely wise thing to do, but the one thing I would recommend is add colloidal gold, 500 parts per million, a shot every morning before breakfast for 6 weeks. And it actually stores in the brain, so it's meant to be, you know. All right, no more questions, no more comments. So shoot me an email if you're interested in the retreat before it fills up, because we will have only a certain amount of space. Also, Sacred Valley, we still have a room open, so you'd have to get here pretty quick because we're done on the 11th of September. But it's awesome here too. Like, we can walk from our property to an Incan ruin. It's like it covers the top of like 3 mountains. No one is ever there. I mean, there's so many Incan ruins all over South America, I guess, that they're like massive complexes that are just like in my neighborhood, you know, not doing anything. No one coming. The old Incan road, but the cobblestones goes all the way down to the street. The drainage that they had is still there. And way up at the top where we went this last time, there are like spires in the mountain. There's eagles and kites and condors around, and it's just crazy. And we found this big giant, I mean, it's like the size of a house, and it's a skull. And we didn't go all the way up there. We're going, I think, on Tuesday the rest of the way up. But I think they carved it. Like its mouth is open a little bit. It has eye socket, nose, and even white teeth. Like there was like a mineral vein, and they just like carved around it to use it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. I didn't bring my camera last time, and I'm glad because I fell off of a little cliff and I broke my phone, and that sucks. But I would have broke the camera maybe too, so I'm glad I didn't bring it. But I will this time, so I'll post videos. By the way, you guys, I'm taking a lot of my old videos off of YouTube, putting them into Patreon. You know, the way it works when you're deprioritized is your videos go out once, no matter how well they do. In the test batch, they don't get, because that's how it's supposed to work. It goes out, test batch, and then if it does well, it gets sent out again. I can have, you know, top 1% metrics on a video, and it's going to die after the test batch. So they're not just sitting on YouTube, never being seen. I'm going to at least organize them better, put them in collections, and they're going to be available to Substack paid subscribers. By the way, if you like my content, I guarantee you belong on Substack. It is easily the best platform on the internet. So head over there if you haven't followed me there already, because it's going to be much better. It's going to be much better content too, because I can say anything there. They really don't have any bias, and they don't shadow ban or censor. So please support Substack, or I'll kick you right square in the motherfucking nuts. I know a fellow that lives in Merida, Mexico. Yeah, well, Sacred Valley, where we live, is pretty amazing too. I mean, our neighbors, a lot of them only speak Quechua. They're still living like they have for 2,000 years. You know, like we're the only, there's a little enclave of modern houses here, but the rest of the, you know, most of our neighbors have no windows and stuff. I mean, and people talk about eradicating the poverty and bringing education in and blah, 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 blah. But I'm like, man, these people are smiling all the time. Why are you trying to fuck with them? You know, like, what is the issue here? They grow potatoes and corn. They have cows, pigs, and sheep. You know what I mean? What do they need? What do they need your bullshit for? So they can be miserable and get caught up in the rat race? Like, for what? For fucking what? You know? It's true though. They seem pretty happy. They look pretty hard sometimes though. Like, there's these women that, particularly from, I guess it's one group or something, because they have these hats, kind of like derbies, and they always have them cocked to the side, and they just look gangster as shit. And if they do smile, it's kind of like it's got a gangster lean, you know, the smile. It's crazy. They don't just look like hardened. They literally look gangster, but they're like 4 feet tall and 2.5, 3 feet wide. But you know, they rock. They're just these gangster ass old ladies that just be handling their business with their sheep. You know what I'm saying? On their block with their goat cocked or whatever. Anyways, guys, I'm obviously delirious. I'm out of here. I'm doing music tomorrow night, though, man. I'm going to make myself do it. So join me for that. Please hit the like button, share, subscribe. Consider becoming a patron because we're demonetized. And if we're going to take over the world, we need funds because you know what I mean? Otherwise, we're going to be throwing rocks at tanks and shit, and that's not going to do fucking anything. So